now. So bonjour, Chancy, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning for University of Manitoba's first Counselor Seminar session supporting Indigenous students. So my name is Marla Robson, and I'm a member of the Indigenous recruitment team. We are a 3-member team, which includes my colleague, Nicole Stonick, who will be facilitating the latter Q&A portion of today's session. Pre-pandemic, Indigenous recruitment traveled to many communities in Northern Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario. So hopefully we've connected with you before, but if not, we definitely encourage you to reach out to us to say hello and to access our counselor services. So we work with all Indigenous folks, Métis, First Nation, and Inuit students, as well as adult learners and mature students. And we know many of you are supporting these same students, which brought you here today. A big part of our role is connecting incoming students with the great Indigenous community on campus. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's speakers from the Indigenous Students Center, Ashley Edson and Denise Prue. Take it away.
Tashi, good morning, everyone. Just give me a second here to get my presentation up. Can everyone see it? Excellent. So good morning. It's great to be here. I'm part of the circle today. Just before we start, I'd just like to mention that in terms of an agenda for today, we'd like to introduce ourselves, provide a brief overview of the services and programs that we offer at the Indigenous Student Center, and then, like Marla said, followed by a Q&A where we will do our best to answer any questions that you may have. For privacy, we will not answer any questions pertaining to specific students, but we will answer questions about general services and how to access them. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge the land that we are coming from this morning. The University of Manitoba campuses are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and the mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. We also honor the lands and the original inhabitants of the lands that you are joining us from if they differ from where we are. My name is Denise Prue, and I am Métis from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I am a student advisor and program coordinator at the Indigenous Student Center. I'm a first-generation graduate of the University of Manitoba with a degree in sociology. I've been working at the U of M for over 16 years, and I am currently pursuing a letter of accomplishment in academic advising. Ashley, over to you.
Thanks, Denise. Tansy, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and join you all today. Really excited to share with you just a little bit myself. So I am a Cree and settler woman with family ties to the Peepekes Cree Nation on Treaty 4 territory in Saskatchewan. I was born and raised here, so I also consider this very much so my homeland too. My role at the Indigenous Student Center is the Indigenous Graduate Student Success Coordinator. And I'm just very honored to provide supports for current and prospective Indigenous graduate students. And just really excited to be here today to talk to you about the Indigenous Student Center. So I think the next slide. So yeah, I'm just going to start off by, like Denise said, we're just going to review a bit about the Indigenous Student Center and some of the supports that are available to you. So for folks who haven't come down to the Indigenous Student Center, just to let you know, it is a physical building that's located between the Education Building and Max Bell Center on the Fort Garry campus. You'll also hear Denise and I and others refer to the Indigenous Student Center as Mi'kmaq, which means Bald Eagle Lodge, or we also refer to it as the Lodge, kind of our home away from home, both just, I would say, for staff and faculty and students. And the Mi'kmaq is an Anishinaabe name that was gifted by many elders and knowledge keepers when the building was built. So just to give you an idea of what you can kind of access through Mi'kmaq is that we really try to support you in a very holistic way. So we offer different academic, cultural, personal, financial supports to help you make your way through your studies. And so, yeah, like our mission is always to provide that holistic and culturally grounded advising services for Indigenous students, where we consider all aspects of your health and well-being. So your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and cultural well-being. I also want to mention that in the physical space, we have a kitchen where quite often it feels very homey because there's lots of different snacks and things that, like one thing that's always so nice, you come in, there's usually something you can come grab and eat. We also have our elders in residence. We have 3 wonderful elders in residence. And we also have a computer lab in the building as well, along with a gathering space, which we call the circle room, where there's lots of maybe different presentations or activities, and you're welcome to smudge in there. So like I said, it's really a place that's a home for all of us, and we're so open to having anyone come and visit us. I should note right now during the fall term, unfortunately, we're not open to the public right now due to COVID, but we're really excited and cannot wait to be open to the public, and really encourage all of you to come down and check out any of the events or anything, because we're more than happy to come welcome you there. Thanks. Next slide. Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Indigenous Student Center Advisors. We're here to help students achieve their academic goals. We can help them create an academic plan, clarify university policies, and connect them with important services and resources and programming. We also provide holistic and culturally grounded advising services for our Indigenous students, where we nurture mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual and cultural well-being. So a few things to note with that. ISC advisors are generalists, which means that we know a little bit about everything and often refer students to the experts for assistance. When we provide holistic supports that include access to reading specialists, tutors, counselors, elders, just to name a few. ISC advisors also advise students academically up to 60 credit hours, so basically the end of year 2. And at that point, we refer students to their faculty advisor. They still can meet with us, of course, for all other matters. We don't turn anyone away ever. We are student-centered. We meet students where they're at, and we help them figure out their path. So that may also include a reference to career services to do some career exploration. Most importantly, though, we let students know that they are not alone and that there are many people walking beside them on their journey at the U of M. Additionally, we are very lucky to have Crystal Beyer. She is the Indigenous Academic Advisor in the Faculty of Arts. So Crystal is able to advise Indigenous students who are enrolled in the Faculty of Arts. She assists them with admission, registration, program changes, referrals, deferrals, and understanding university policies and procedures. Appointments for Crystal can be made by calling the Indigenous Student Center. She's available Mondays from 1 to 4 and Wednesdays from 9 to 12. And something important about Crystal is she will see any students who are part of the Faculty of Arts, not just students who are over 60 credit hours.
Wonderful. Thanks, Denise. So the next bit, we're just going to start sharing a little bit about some of the student support programs that are coordinated by the Indigenous Student Center advisors. So I'm going to start us off by talking a little bit about the Qualco Bridge to Success program, or we also refer to it as QBTS. And so with this program, the goal of QBTS is to facilitate the transition of new Indigenous, so First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students into post-secondary education at the University of Manitoba by offering pre-orientation activities, academic learning supports, advising, peer mentorship, and special events that will enhance their first year program. And so I just also want to note that this program, along with the other ones, there's no cost to participate. And so with the QBTS program, basically any student who applies to be part of QBTS is considered a QBTS student. And a QBTS student who completes 3 or more activities between when it runs between late August to like April, will be considered as completing the program successfully. And for those folks, the exciting thing is the people who are successful in completing the program have the incentive of being part of a draw for and qualifying for one of 4 1,000 tuition prize draws. And so to be completing or successfully completing that program, it's suggested to complete 3 components. Ones that we usually kind of really suggest to students to complete is attending a boot camp. So that's kind of that pre-orientation activity that kind of gets you some understanding for how to navigate the university. Go and have a mentor through the Nietzsche Walk-In program, which I'll talk a little bit about too, and to register for the QBTS section of Arts 1110. But there's other ways also that students can kind of engage in QBTS. So there's other activities, like I said, cultural learning activities, academic supports, attending virtual study halls, things like that, that really go on to enhance and build your community and get you prepared for that transition into university. Because I know Denise and I can relate to that. It is a big move when you're going into university. It's very different situation, right? And so it's really nice to have a program like this that provides that kind of support for you to really get to know and build a community of other first year students and really, learn how to, connect with different resources and really navigate the university. So one aspect I also want to briefly touch on too is the Nietzsche Walk-In Indigenous Peer Mentorship Program. And so with this program, it's really like the word implies, is a mentorship program. So it pairs first year students with later year students, so usually like second year and up. So folks who are been part of the university for at least a year and have been part of the Nietzsche Walk-In program. So Nietzsche Walk-In is just a really great component of the QBTS program that students are able to participate in. Again, it's free to be a part of, and you just sign up when you're in that program, and you're matched with another mentor who you meet with monthly. So right now, I know during COVID, mentors would meet maybe, check in with each other over text or like over Zoom or things like that. But I know a lot of times, people will go maybe to events together or grab a coffee. And so it's really just building that community and having that mentor who you can kind of walk alongside during your studies. So I know a lot of people really appreciate that connection and quite often come on to be mentors later down the road, right, and give back, just honoring kind of what they received to that program. And so I also should mention that it is actually closed for registration. It's a good problem to have in the sense of it's very popular. So we're seeing that growth because we have a max intake of 65 students for QBTS, but something to definitely keep in mind. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things you can access through the center too, that are similar to QBTS. Yeah.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks.
The next program that I'd like to talk about is the Blankstein Momentum Program. And this is a program that I'm particularly passionate about because I'm the program coordinator for it. So the Blankstein Momentum Program is for Indigenous students who are returning to their studies. So anyone who has completed some post-secondary work, who are looking to get back on track, stay on track, elevate their GPA, and or even become a part of their Indigenous community. It is designed to provide access to supports that contribute to post-secondary persistence, overall well-being, and personal success. Momentum uses a holistic approach that includes bi-weekly learning workshops, advisor meetings, access to tutors, group activities, and cultural and spiritual care. So it's kind of an extension and an expansion of the QBTS program. Much like the Qualico program, it is free of cost. It runs late August to March with a celebration wind up in April. The maximum intake is 20 students per academic year, and priority will be given to those who have not been a part of the program before. Similar to the Qualico Bridge to Success program, there are incentives for participating. So students are provided with a checklist at the beginning of the year. The checklist is a checklist of requirements that they must fulfill to be eligible to be entered in to win one of 5 $1,000 tuition prize awards that will be applied to their Aurora account for the following term or the following year. The checklist introduces students to supports and activities that they may not have sought out on their own. The next program that I'd like to talk about is the Empowering You Financial Wellness program. The Indigenous Student Center is committed to providing students with the knowledge, skills, and resources to make confident, responsible financial decisions. We get that with busy academic schedules, jobs, and family commitments, it can often become difficult to devote time to managing money. We recognize that these demands can be stressful and can also impact studies. So the Empowering You program helps create awareness that it's never too late to start developing financially smart habits. The program consists of workshops such as budgeting, understanding credit, and reducing debt. It has a social media presence where every Friday is termed Financial Fridays on the ISC Facebook page, where scholarships and bursary opportunities are advertised. Students are able to meet one-on-one with the program coordinator to discuss any financial concerns. It's partnership-based with community organizations such as Seed Winnipeg and Community Financial Counseling Services. So those are folks that often come in and deliver some of the workshops for us. And there's a really great Empowering You website on the university's webpage that provides all kinds of tools and resources for students to access and use. Ashley.
Wonderful, thanks Denise. So I'm just going to talk about a couple more programs that are managed through the Indigenous Student Center. So the next one is the Indigenous Circle of Empowerment, or ICE, which is a student leadership program that's grounded in culture and really is meant to just empower Indigenous students with pride and confidence and skills. They need to be leaders in their communities, their professional fields, and really just the world. It's an awesome program and opportunity for students to be involved in, because it really it enables you to connect with other like-minded students and folks, and also lots of different opportunities to connect with different leaders like politicians, activists, all sorts of wonderful folks. They meet weekly, so they usually start off by having like supper, and then they have time with different leaders and activities. So I've come to them. They're really great, great meetings to be part of. And the other things that they also work on is, really just building and developing their leadership skills. So some of the supports that have been provided is being connected and with Anishinaabe Toastmakers. So really being able to practice your skills for presentations and things like that, right? That would be important leadership skills. I should also mention that with ICE program, that it is approved for co-curricular record, which shows up on your transcript as a student, and just looks really great for other things that you might be involved in or other applications. So if you're applying for funding or things like that, it just really can strengthen those applications that you might put forward. It is also another program that's free to participate, of course, but it is limited to 16 students per year, and it has an annual deadline of September 16th. So that's coming up really quickly. So that's closing. And I should also mention that it's only open to Indigenous students, again, so First Nations, Métis, Inuit students with a minimum GPA of 2.5. and have completed a minimum of 30 credit hours of coursework. So folks who are usually in like their second year and beyond, and maintain at least a 60% course load. And so I think that there's more information in the chat about that program. So I'll go to the next slide. And so I'll talk a little about SAGE, which is the program I coordinate. So SAGE is the Supporting Indigenous Graduate Enhanced program. And it's really meant to just be a very holistic, student-centered programming that's aimed at both prospective and current Indigenous graduate students. So I work with lots of students who are studying at the U of M, but also lots of students who maybe are interested in applying to the U of M, or even undergrad students who are really, curious about what is graduate studies and, how do I get there? Like, what's that path like? And so usually all of our workshops, all of our talks, our weekly SAGE cafes, which are really just informal gatherings to just build community, those are open, like I said, to both current and prospective Indigenous grad students. So even if you're just considering grad school or just curious about it, it's great just checking out our different activities and events, just so you can really start building that community and really kind of get a sense of what that's like. And I should also mention that it's offered year round. So with grad studies, it's a little different. There's folks in different stages. There's people in coursework, people who are in their writing stages. And so all of our supports are offered year round to try to really accommodate and fit into all of our very busy lives. But yeah, I just really want to encourage you, if you are curious or wondering about what is, graduate studies, just to come check out that program. And one way I kind of encourage people to kind of connect with us is to either sign up and connect with me. So the link will be in the chat for my contact information to be added to our mailing list, or to join our private Facebook group. And on there, there's just really just a dialogue amongst each other, and questions and sharing about events and opportunities. So a couple different ways for us to really kind of engage with each other outside of the different events. So yeah, I think that's all I'll share that. Thanks, Denise.
Thanks, Ashley. I'd like to take a second to talk about some of the cultural opportunities that we have at the Indigenous Student Center. So the first being Fireside Chats, which is a speaker series that features topics on traditional knowledges on life and living as it is today. It's held every second Tuesday from September to June, and I believe the first one is starting September 21st. The chats are open to the public, and all community members are welcome to attend. Information can be found on our events calendar for login details for the chats. We're also fortunate to have elders in residence. We have 3 elders at ISC, Elder Wanda Murdoch, Elder Norman Mead, and Elder Carl Stone. And students are welcome to book appointments to speak with them by calling our front desk. We also have sharing circles. So virtual sharing circles are held every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Wednesday sharing circles are open to UM staff, students, and community, and they start at 12:30. The sharing circles on Monday, I think were just updated. They're reserved specifically for women, and they start at 11:30 a.m. But more information can be found on the Indigenous events calendar. Zongi Bowen, We're Standing Strong, is a weekly men's group where Indigenous men come together to explore their strengths and examine their identity. The group is open to all those who identify as Indigenous men, including those who are two-spirited and who are connected to the U of M as a current student, alumni, prospective student, intimate partner, children 16 years or older, or family members of a current student. So it's quite open to the community as well. We also have full moon ceremonies, which we have been doing virtually over the past year. The full moon ceremony is to honor ourselves, other women, and our relationship with Grandmother Moon. A time to come together and celebrate life. Any and all girls and women who identify as women, and those who identify as women, including women on their moon time, are welcome to attend. We also have the Elders and Traditional Peoples Gathering. The University of Manitoba Indigenous Student Center is excited to invite all of our relations to attend the 15th Annual Elders and Traditional People Gathering. This gathering will be held at the University of Manitoba, which is located on Treaty 1 territory, home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. So the purpose of this gathering is to bring elders and traditional people from many different nations together to offer teachings and to share knowledge. This year's theme is storytelling through music, art, and poetry. This year, we are excited to come together in community and share our stories and sing songs in celebration of what makes our culture strong and resilient. Another thing that I just wanted to point out as well is that traditional medicines are also made available to current University of Manitoba students in the Indigenous Student Center. So if there's a current student who is looking for sage or cedar, they can always come to our front desk and request some, and we do have a supply there as well. Ashley.
Thanks so much, Denise. And so, you know, Denise and I have actually been kind of mentioning these folks kind of throughout the presentation, but we also have wonderful partnerships with other programs that are and services that are kind of campus-wide at the University of Manitoba. And so, like just looking at the slide, there's student counseling services. And so those are free counseling sessions that students are able to access. And we actually have designated slots through the Indigenous Student Center. So that will allow you to kind of, you know, get to see a counselor as soon as possible. And other partnerships we have, which we kind of mentioned with some of the workshops that were offered through QBTS or SAGE or ICE, we partner with the Academic Learning Center. And so they offer lots of different supports of like tutoring, writing support. So I quite often work with them with graduate students for writing supports. And when we're in person, usually we have Miriam, who's in the space next to the computer lab, and you can usually just pop in and come and see her and have appointments with her. We also have a reference librarian, Lyle Ford, and he's really wonderful and just being able to help you kind of navigate library services. If you're like curious about how do I do research in the library and things like that, he's just a really great resource for students to access through Migazi as well. We also have folks from student advocacy. So student advocacy is a service that students can access to really learn more about their rights as students and to kind of try to understand the processes, so the different policies and things like that. They're just really wonderful folks who provide confidential appointments. So you can really just try to like understand if you're maybe going through something personal or maybe academic, you know, issues. They're great folks that, you know, you can connect to as well. We also work closely with career services. Again, great folks who can maybe help you plan out, you know, maybe your career path if you're kind of curious about like what will my Bachelor of Arts kind of, you know, bring me? What can I maybe do with this afterwards, right? They're really wonderful to kind of talk to you about that, and also even just planning out, working on your resume, your CVs, job searches, at any point throughout your studies, whether you're like wanting to get a job during it or afterwards. They're really great to kind of help you kind of navigate that. And so normally, like I was mentioning, and Denise and I have mentioned, all these campus partners work with us in the lodge in Migazi regularly. But for now, you can access all of their services and meet with them individually by appointment. And so the easiest way to do that is just to connect to our front desk, which we'll put up that contact information. I believe there's a link as well. And that's how you can connect with those folks. So next slide. And then we're also really, really fortunate to be connected to these other partnering programs through the Indigenous Student Center. And so we kind of actually refer to these folks as our cousin programs. And so maybe some of you might have been familiar with the Access program. Maybe some people have heard of that one. Really, Access is providing services like holistic services for students choosing to begin an academic journey. So usually this program is open to Manitoba residents who have experienced barriers to post-secondary education due to like residents maybe at remote locations, economic or cultural reasons, but preference is also given to Indigenous students. So again, status, non-status First Nations, Métis, Inuit, residents of Northern Manitoba, low-income earners and newcomers. And so I would just mention that, highlight that Access and GAP are open not just to Indigenous students, but also like newcomer populations as well. The other three, Pine, IVIP, and Wawate, are Indigenous student focused. And again, they're very similar in the sense of trying to create those supports for students who are studying in specific fields. So with NGAP, that's engineering, Pine, it's nursing, IBEP is business, and Wawate is science students. So just providing those kind of holistic supports for students in those specific areas to be successful in those pathways. And I believe, yeah, we have more information in the chat, so thanks.
Okay, we have the graduation celebration, the traditional annual graduation powwow. It's an annual event held in May of each year. Currently, we celebrated virtually the last two spring convocations, hoping that we'll be able to celebrate in person for the next one. The celebration is to honor First Nation, Métis, and Inuit graduates. Students, family, and community members are of course invited to attend us to join in this celebration. It's an event that brings like the entire campus community together. We're also very fortunate that our students are able to receive the Indigenous graduation stole that you see there pictured in the photo. It was recently approved as official academic attire. So if you're at a convocation and you see a University of Manitoba student wearing one of those, they are one of our Indigenous students. So there's lots of opportunities to volunteer at this event. The volunteer opportunities are open to students, staff, and community members. We usually start recruiting volunteers in about February, I believe it is. So cross your fingers that we'll be able to have an in-person graduation powwow this year, because that would be really magnificent if we could.
Absolutely. Okay, and so Denise and I also just really want to highlight how you can stay connected to us at the Indigenous Student Center. So there's several ways. I was mentioning our front desk. So our front desk phone number is the one listed there. We also have the front desk email, so isc@umanitoba.ca. And that's something that, you know, you can phone or email the front desk to inquire about any of the supports, to book appointments with any of the services that we mentioned. And yeah, we're more than happy to make those connections for you. Other ways to stay connected to us, of course, is through social media. So we also have Instagram handles, so at Indigenous. And we also have our Facebook page, which is in the Indigenous Student Center at University of Manitoba. So that's how you can kind of look us up. And the other thing we were kind of mentioning about all the different opportunities and events is looking up the events calendar link at the University of Manitoba. And so if you go on there, you can basically look it up and see weekly the things that are just popping up. Because even though we mentioned a lot right now, there's always new opportunities that come up and new events to kind of stay informed about. And so we always suggest for folks to really check out the events link, because that's where you can usually find out about like different events, but also more details about how to connect and contact who for if there's a registration for a Zoom link or things like that. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And this is super exciting. So we popped this in here because it was pretty timely. It's a save the date for Indigenous orientation. This is happening tomorrow, Wednesday, September 15th from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. It is a virtual event that's open to all Indigenous students and the campus community and the community in general. Like I said, it's virtual via Zoom. It's the opportunity to meet the Indigenous Student Center team and learn about the resources that we offer. There'll be entertainment breaks featuring performances by Keely McPeak, Ray Coco Stevenson, and traditional powwow dancers. The event will also close with a weekly community sharing circle hosted by Elder Carl Stone. So like I mentioned, the event is open to the University of Manitoba Indigenous students and our campus communities, as well as our partners. You can learn more about services, see staff members, ask questions via the chat, and students will be entered to win one of 5 gift cards for the bookstore. So I believe Marla's going to pop the link into the chat that will take you to a registration page where you just enter details, click register, then an email will be sent to you with the Zoom login details. So we hope to see you there.
So I just wanted to pop up our contact information again. If you have questions about even the orientation that Denise just mentioned, please feel free to connect with us at our front desk. Maybe you want to take a photo. If you're like me, sometimes I'm watching presentations, I can grab my cell phone and I capture this information that way, so I have it on me. But yeah, we just really encourage you to stay connected to us. Even before you're part of U of M, we're more than happy for you to connect with us and really be part of our community. And so I think with that's kind of the end of our kind of formal presentation part. And so Denise and I just really want to thank you all for listening to us. And we're just really excited to answer any questions you may have. So I'm just gonna put it over to Nicole now for the Q&A.
Thank you. Miigwech, Kinalaskamatin. Thank you so much, Denise, and to you as well, Ashley, for this wonderful presentation. And what I love so much about it is it just really shows our counselors and all those who are encouraging our students to apply to universities, specifically the University of Manitoba, just to show them that how many supports and services are available to these students and how much is available to help them to succeed and have really positive university experiences. And also that collaborative effort. So you really touched on that really, really well in terms of who you work with and how we work with each other and everything that's offered with it. So it's not just like passing students off to one and to the other, but it's just sort of like a really holistic way of looking at everything and a really great way of looking at supports and supporting students throughout their academic journey. So thank you so much for doing all of that. Now, one of the other things I love about our Indigenous community is the diverse background of all our counselors and our students. So we have folks joining us from all different areas in Northern Manitoba right now, including within the city of Winnipeg. So it's really super exciting to have all these folks with us here for today. And there are a couple of questions that did come through. And so this is a really great opportunity for anyone else who's out there right now that has any questions at all. Marla and I are on standby and here to support you. And of course, for Ashley and Denise to answer those questions. So if it's okay, Denise, I would like to start off with you. I have a counselor here who is in a smaller school. And so therefore, not all of the courses are available to grade 12 students that are part of some of those admission requirements. So for example, in this particular school, they don't offer pre-calculus math or physics. So how do you work with students who've applied, say, to University One, where those courses are not required for admissions, but they're needed in order to take other courses as prerequisites? So how does that work and how do you work with those students?
Yeah, absolutely. I can answer that. We work with students all the time that don't have their prerequisites for some of their courses. The U of M does offer some upgrading options through the Faculty of Education, but there are also upgrading options that students can take at Winnipeg Adult Education Center as well as JobWorks. When we are working with students that are taking their upgrading courses, we like to recommend to the students that they consider these courses as a university course and schedule enough time in their schedules so that they have enough time to complete coursework as they would be doing a university course, because it's the upgrading courses are the same time requirements as a university course. So absolutely many students are successful while they're taking the prerequisite courses and taking U of M courses as well.
Excellent, thank you. So that's really good to know too, that there's those opportunities where students can almost take a look at it as a blended model. So it's not the doors closed, there's always a way to make it work. And really important to realize with universities, like that chess game, you just have to learn how to move the pieces to best benefit the student that's coming in, and then how we can work to make that happen. So thank you very much for that response. I do have another one coming in here, it looks like. And Ashley, if you don't mind, I'm gonna call on for you to answer. You know, a lot of students, or rather a lot of counselors have worked with students that wish to support their education financially through band funding. But some of their students don't have a treaty card. So would you be able to respond to that?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. That's a really good question and something that we get asked a lot. And so the unfortunate thing is that, you know, in order to have band funding, to have access to it, you have to have a treaty card. So students do need to apply for their treaty card as soon as possible. It usually takes, you know, quite a few months for your treaty card to come to you. That process is kind of slow. And so we usually try to encourage students that we're working with to be working with their families and getting that as soon as possible. So yeah, 6 months to a year, hopefully. But let's say you're in the case that you don't have your treaty card and you're waiting for that. You know, you're more than welcome, because we are very mindful, of course, that, you know, that comes hand in hand, the idea of how are you going to pay for tuition and like student living costs. And so we're more than happy as the Indigenous Student Center advisors, and also the Indigenous student recruitment team is happy to work with you in finding different financial resources. So bursaries, scholarships, student loans, different funding opportunities to really kind of support you and during your studies. So yeah, that's usually the advice we kind of give.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ashley. Oh my goodness, now that we've opened up the doors, we got questions everywhere. So this is wonderful.
Okay.
I'm just going to rotate. So Denise, if you don't mind, I have a counselor asking about funding options. So we've been talking about band funding, and you do run the financial Empowering You Financial Wellness Program. So could you speak to also other funding options that are available to students besides band funding?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let the counselors know that are in the session today, we actually have a new coordinator for the Empowering You Financial Wellness program, because my portfolio expanded. That would be Zach Unross. So he would be the one to connect with going forward. But other funding opportunities can include things like student loans, applying for scholarships and bursaries, which we list in the Indigenous student newsletter, as well as on our social media channels. We give a list of upcoming scholarships and bursaries that have deadlines. So it's kind of a heads up for students that they should be thinking about applying for those. Other options too, sometimes students can go and talk to their financial institution. Some financial institutions have student loans where they will only loan the student the amount for their tuition and their books. So it's just covering the cost of what they need. They're not giving them a loan for more than what they need that they might then have a harder time paying off. So those are some of the things off the top of my head that I can think of.
Excellent advice. Yes, and there's so many other different ways that students can finance their education. So for students who are going through band funding, or even the Métis post-secondary education Plan Fund. You know, those aren't the only tools in the box, so to speak. So always encouraging students to take advantage of, you know, the Empowering You Financial Wellness Program that Zach is running, and just to get involved, check out the financial aid and awards website. So again, we have a lot of things available for students, but it's just really doing the footwork to discover and explore what is available. So thank you for the question, Counselor, and also thank you, Denise, for answering.
Yeah,
Then
Nicole, I have one thing that I think that I'd like to add to that as well too, is there's lots of ways to pay for school, yes, but there's a lot of ways that we need to learn how to be more responsible with our funds that we have. So I also recommend to students to attend the workshops on budgeting, because that will also help them, you know, make sure that they have the funds they need throughout the school year, and they don't, you know, run out of money or find themselves in a tough situation.
Excellent point. Yeah, how do you stretch those dollars and make them work for the best of a student's benefit? Thank you, Denise. That's an excellent point. Ashley, if you don't mind, if I could ask you now. Now, as you know, we do have particularly for University One, it's one of those flexible programs that students can not only apply on or before March the 1st, but also all the way, you know, into, you know, later spring and summer as well, with a deadline of August the 1st. Now, with students that are planning or decide later on that they want to apply to university, and then they end up applying later in July, could you talk about some of the implications or considerations when applying a little bit later than a student normally would?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, yeah, a really great question to ask. And so I guess one thing that I you know, I think the advisors, and I think the ISR team also kind of really mentions to these folks is that if you're applying a bit later, there may be the implications would be about, you know, having access to certain courses to register. So for first year students, the registration time to register for courses is usually about the beginning of July. And so, you know, if you're applying a bit later than that, after that registration period, you know, you might not be able to access all the courses that you want to take for your first year. And so, you know, it can be really tricky that way. And so that's why we say, like, you know, this is your registration time, you know, get up that morning, register, like at it when it opens at 9, like register right at that moment, because, you know, it is, you know, competitive sometimes for certain classes, especially with first year with classes like intro to psych and intro to sociology, like some of these bigger classes that, you know, that maybe a lot of folks need to take, can be quite tricky to get into. And also just thinking about your schedule, right? And so while there are different sections that are available, you know, you might not get the section that you want then if you're registering later or applying later. Other things are just, you know, to be mindful of is just even knowing that our busy season, because it's that registration period in July, it can be a little trickier to get in appointments with either your faculty advisors, so with the program like U1 or things like that, or even just us at the ISC at the center. Obviously, we try to prioritize first year students and first applicants, but it can be really tough sometimes because there's only like 3 of us right now, and then there will be 5, but it can be tricky to sometimes get an appointment with us. So that's some things to kind of be mindful of. Off the top of my head, I don't know, Denise, is there anything else that you kind of can think of with maybe applying a bit later?
Well, with applying a bit later too, some students might not qualify for, or they wouldn't qualify for some of the entrance bursaries that the university might be offering if they had have applied by March 1st.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a big one, actually. Yeah, March 1st is always the deadline that student recruitment does emphasize for the counselors and students, because entrance scholarships, as long as you apply by the March 1st deadline, there's nothing anymore that students need to do. They're automatically considered for those. So yeah, exactly. So that would be if you have a student that's doing really quite well, and they could get anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, just by applying. Definitely
Right.
encourage that March 1st deadline if possible. Thank you. No, great points. I think we have time for one more quick question. A quick, as I say, quotes, because sometimes these do take time, right? And it's a lot of things to consider. But for Denise, I have a counselor here actually, and this is really in regards to the impacts of COVID-19 has had on our students and remote learning, and especially with the students that are going to be graduating this year, or for students who are now in the grade 11 year. And so it's even more, we have to take even more into considerations when students are moving on into post-secondary education. So what would you suggest for skills that students in grades 11 and 12 could really work on and consider in preparation for university and even that greater transition gap?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that comes to mind, and probably the most important, is to get those students connected to their counselors right away and make sure that they have the prerequisites for the courses that they may need in university, such as chem, math, physics. This should all be done starting in grade 10. The prerequisites for courses at the U of M for the counselors, they can be found in the first year planning guide. It's an online guide that breaks down all the different degrees on campus and the recommended courses that students should be taking within their first year of studies. It'll also highlight the prerequisites that are needed to take those courses and maybe take some of the future courses within that degree. So it's never too late to start talking prerequisites with your students, because it's much easier to get them done before you get to university than it is to do them while you're at university. I mean, we have students that are successful that do them while they're at university, but if you can just clear them out of the way and not have to think about them, that's one less thing that you have to think about when you come to university. So the other thing that pops to mind are things like time management, just talking to students about how to balance, schoolwork, work, even extracurricular activities, cultural commitments. And a good rule we like to tell students when they get to university is a 2-for-1 rule. So for every 1 hour that you're in a class, you should be spending about 2 hours studying for that same class. So just really enforcing that and getting students to look at how much time a university class actually will be taking them. The other thing too is using a planner or a calendar to keep track of assignment dates and deadlines, because if they're in multiple classes, they're going to have multiple assignments and dates and deadlines. And it's best if they could put them all down in one place so that they can help stay organized, and it'll eliminate some of the frustration and reduce any overwhelming feelings that they may be experiencing. So yeah, and last is just like some study skill techniques in that. There's a lot of really cool study skill timers that are on apps, such as the Pomodoro method. There's also Forest, but I think you may have to pay for Forest now. But if you just search up time management, study skill apps, a bunch of them will come up. So get students using those kind of things, because we have them using them here.
Absolutely. I also just want to encourage students to, those are all such excellent points, Denise, but also encourage you to have, high school students, make appointments with us, like the ISC advisors. We're happy to meet with folks in grade 9 or 10 or whatever. It's never too early. Like, that's how we kind of feel, to be proactive. And we're more than happy to talk with you. I mean, even those meetings, if you wanted to meet with a parent too, like we're more than happy to take on appointments like that as well. Just to start you kind of thinking about university and how you're the pathway, right? And making those connections and getting that kind of advice. So yeah, that's just another little piece of advice I might add to folks who are preparing for that transition too.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Denise. Thank you for taking the time to answer these questions. Super important, and I'm just so happy that our counselors are really engaged with this live Q&A. So this is great. So I guess we're just basically going to wrap up. So I think Marla has finished answering the last of the questions behind the scenes. So I'll ask her to come in and join us as we say goodbye to everyone for today. Just wait for her to pop back on. But this has been really great. Oh, there she is.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thanks so much for all of your questions, and I hope that we were able to answer them either live or in the question and answer box. So I wanted to definitely thank Denise and Ashley, and for also Nicole for facilitating that session. So as you gathered, there's lots of information and lots of things happening on campus with many community opportunities to take part. So folks have contacted Indigenous engagement in the past to say and ask, how can I stay informed? Lots of different ways. If you head on over to umanitoba.ca/Indigenous, you can find a bunch of different links there. You can also find a link to join the Indigenous Connect e-newsletter. And all of our event happenings are posted in there as well. Again, the events calendar, and you can definitely find us on social media. If you head to that page and you scroll down to find the Let's Get You Started, that will actually connect you to Indigenous recruitment, so to Nicole and myself. And you can also email us at indigenous_recruitment@umanitoba.ca. So that brings our session to a close today. Please consider checking out our other sessions, one especially for new counselors and the general counselor seminar that's coming up next week. Thanks so much for sitting with us. We look forward to working with you this year. Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.